Education TV, sharing knowledge.
Today we are going to discuss business communication, and before going to the discussion of business communication, firstly we need to understand the word communication, because we know that business communication actually comes from the word communication. So firstly we have to understand, we have to define what is communication. We know that communication is a significant matter in our life, from personal life to social life, state life, business life. In every sector, communication is very much significant matter. Without communication, it's not possible to do anything. So we have to understand communication. Communication is a word. Communication is a word, and this word has been derived from Latin word. The word communication has been derived from Latin word communis. Communis, C-O-M-M-U-N-I-S. Communis. To understand the communication, firstly we need to understand from where this word comes. Now, what is the definition of communication? What do you mean by communication? Actually, communication is a process. It's a process. Communication is a process of transmitting or exchanging information, values, ideas, knowledge, etc. between two parties. That means when information or other things, other matters will be exchanged, will be transmitted, will be exchanged between two or more parties, that event, that incident will be called a communication. So communication means actually exchanging the information, exchanging something between parties, among parties. Now, what is a business communication? Business communication is a specialized branch of general communication that occurs in the business activities. That means when a communication will be happening in the business sector, that will be referred to as the business communication. We know that in business there are lots of activities, and to implement these activities without communication it's not possible. The business manager has to communicate, the production manager has to communicate, and the executives or the lower level personnel has to communicate with the upper level bosses. So communication is must. In case of the business communication, we say that business communication is a system that affects change within the total organization. That means when the communication is involved with the business organization, that is the business communication. The exchange of ideas, news or views in connection with the business among the different parties is called business communication. So the formal definition of business communication is communications occurred between two or more businessmen for organizing and administering business efficiently is called a business communication. Finally, we can conclude that business communication is the process where business-related issues, functions, information, news, views, etc. are exchanged among producers, distributors, buyers, sellers, suppliers, competitors, government organizations, business parties, etc. for efficiently organizing and administering business. Business communication is the part of the general communication. There are lots of differences between business communication and general communication. Now we want to identify, we want to recognize the differences between business communication and general communication. So here the topic is differences between business communication and general communication. Business communication is happened to achieve business related objectives, but general communications is occurred actually to achieve any type of objective except business related objectives. Generally, business communication deals with the business related issues and functions, but on the other hand, General communication deals with the personal or interpersonal issues and matters. If we say about the differences on the basis of scope, we can say that the business communication scope is obviously limited compared to the general communication. That means general communication scope is a large scope. In case of the business communication, there is no opportunity to express the personal emotions. That means when business communication is happened, generally the two parties or different kinds of the parties involved with the business communication, they have no any feelings, they have no any emotions in case of the communication. But when we say about the general communication, in case of the general communication,
Personal feelings are expressed highly.
channel, business communication mainly uses a verbal channel of communication. On the other hand, general communication mainly uses non-verbal communication channel. Business communication is very much impartial in nature, but that means there is no opportunity, there is no chance to show any partiality. But general communication is partial in nature. In nature, it is very much partial. Business communication occurs and business communications documents are preserved by the organization. Why? Because these are the legal evidence for the future. But personal communication is not the legal evidence. Generally, when personal communication is occurred, this is not stored for the legal evidence. Feedback is essential in business communication because feedback is expected by the sender from the receiver. Without getting the feedback, the communication will not be completed. Generally, sender sends the messages to the receiver in case of the business communication, and after receiving the message, after receiving the communicated matters, the receiver again gives the feedbacks to the sender. But in personal communication, it may not be occurred. That means feedback is not essential in case of the general communication. Audiences of the communication
in business communication,
we can say that it takes place between business people who are actually talking about a subject that is common and important to all. That means the audiences are, all the audiences of the business communications are business people, generally, from the general sense. But when we say about the general communication, it takes different tones depending upon whether we are talking to a child, a friend, or someone who is senior. So here tones are changed based on the receiver.
Business communication
is more formal and follows specific rules of business. On the other, general communication is less formal. Obviously, it is less
and does not follow
any rules except of course rules of etiquette and manners. Business communication maintains a distance and uses a formal language. But on the other, general communication can use slang terms. It can use slang terms and at times be crude when talking to a friend. That does not matter in case of the general communication. The alternative name of business communication is commercial communication. General communications, another name is interpersonal communication. Sometimes different kinds of the graphs can be needed to include in the communication process, in the communication activities. But this is true only for the business communication. In interpersonal communication, in general communication, we don't use the graphs. These are the distinctions between business communication and general communication.